Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers. Well, we're here with a multi-tester head-to-head of two popular daily trainers. We've got the new Nike Pegasus 41 and the Saucony Ride 17. Both neutral, nicely cushioned and designed for easy everyday runs, but potentially with the gears to tackle mid-tempo runs for some runners too. Now, if you're in the market for a shoe that fits that bill, we're here to help you decide where to spend your money. So watch on for our Nike Pegasus 41 versus Saucony Ride 17 head-to-head review. First up, the key details then. On stack height, the Nike Pegasus 41 comes in at 37mm on the heel, 27mm up front for a 10mm drop. The Ride 17 packs a little less in the back with 35mm under the heel, and the same under the forefoot with the 27mm stack for a lower 8mm drop. The Nike Pegasus 41 weighs in at 10.5 ounces or 298 grams in our men's UK 8.5 test shoe size. The Ride 17 are a wafer lighter at 10.3 ounces or 293 grams. On price, the Saucony hits your wallet a smidgen harder in the UK, though they're priced the same in the US. You're going to get the Ride 17 £135 here in the UK or $140. For the Nike, that's going to come in at £130 or $140. Moving on to that quick shoe whip round and comparison, the first thing to note is how strikingly similar these two shoes look. Aside from that 2mm extra in the Pegasus 41 heel, the midsoles offer largely similar stacks with closely matched midsole shaping. When it comes to the foams, the Nike Pegasus 41 uses the React X midsole foam with air zoom units under the forefoot and the heel to add a bit more pop to the ride. The Saucony Ride 17 uses Power Run Plus foam. And the forefoot rock ring is perhaps a little steeper on the Ride 17 as well. Up top, both shoes support engineered mesh uppers that are nicely flexible and largely unstructured, along with medium padded heel collars and tongues. There's perhaps a little more padding in both of those, the heel and the tongue on the Nikes. The similarities come down even right down to where the lacing stops at the back of the toes here. These are very similar shoes. The heel counter in the Pegasus is bigger, and that structure extends further round the heel and it's stiffer further up the back as well. If you flip them over, the Pegasus 41 has marginally more generous covering of outsole rubber, and it's got these kind of little studs to boost the overall grip. The Ride 17 have a few more rubber cutouts, presumably to save on weight.
So when it comes to the fit of the two shoes, I've got the same size in both, which is a UK 9, a US 10. That's the same size I've had with these brands across the years in many different shoes and many different versions of these shoes, and it does fit me very well in terms of the length. I've got enough room in the toe box, but not too much space, and I've got a good hold around the heel and midfoot. Fair bit of padding at the back of the shoes, but there's not excessive amounts of it there, so it doesn't feel like warm or overbearing, and I've not had any problems with it rubbing my heel or Achilles. Only slight concern that has come up with the Saucony is that these lace eyelets, the lace on lace system they have here, I have ripped through one of those when pulling the laces tight one time. I don't think this is a widespread problem, but it does seem like a slightly flimsy design in what is an important area of the shoe, so I'm not a huge fan of that, but in general very happy in my normal running shoe size with both shoes.
So let's give you a quick fit comparison then. Well, the Saucony Ride 17, I've got a good thumbs width in terms of the length, so that's all good for long running, good clearance here. The uppers do flex nicely and there's relatively good clearance across the top of the toes. It can be a little bit snug around this section here onto these sort of toe knuckles. They hold rather than restrict though. It kind of feels well held. You can get a bit of wiggle room up with the toes. When you come back into the lacing, I think you've got really unfussy lacing that I find very easy to get a good lockdown with a nicely padded tongue, sort of medium padded, that just takes any lace pinch off. No problems there at all. When you come back up to the heel collars, I really love this sort of balanced, it's sort of medium level heel collars. There's not much structure to them, so they do flex and move with your foot rather than adding any restriction. The heel kick back here, again, you can see that sort of folds over, so there's no danger of that digging into the base of the Achilles, and it also doesn't come up too high. So all good. I would definitely recommend going true to size in those shoes. I ran in UK 8.5, and that's how I find them nice and comfortable. When it comes over to the Nike Pegasus 41, main difference here, I think, in terms of the run, you've got a similar amount of length in the end of the sort of toe box here. There's good flex in the uppers. One thing you do notice, there's a lot more wiggle room in the toe box. It's a bit looser, and this mesh actually after a couple of 100 miles has become a little bit looser. I noticed that on the move, but you've got, again, there's just good flex around the toe knuckles here. You can, you feel held but not restricted. It's good for long distancing. That again, unfussy lace as you come back. Nice padded tongues that take the lace pinch off. It's very easy to get a lockdown across the top of the midfoot. Back into the heel collars, and you've got medium padded heel collars here, just like the Saucony Ride 17. Really, there's not much to choose. They hold very nicely. There's a little bit more structure to this sort of heel kickback here. It goes a bit higher, but again, it does fold over and there's enough flex. It doesn't give you any problems with aggravation into the Achilles, and I feel the heels hold nicely. Again, in this shoe, I would totally recommend going true to size. Onto the run test then. I've done well over 100 miles in both these shoes, probably much more than that actually, across a range of paces, terrain. I've spent different amounts of time on feet. I also did a marathon test in the Nike Pegasus 41 recently, which you can find on the channel. Go and have a look at that. Now, firstly, so I'm a fan of both of these shoes. They tick a lot of the boxes that I look for in a good everyday shoe. That includes well-fitting uppers that aren't overly plush, balanced midsole that's cushioned and protective, and fairly immediate in its response, but not soft and sludgy. They both offer balanced, stable and reliable platforms to run off. At a little off 10 ounces, they strike a balance on weight as well. And I think you just know what you're going to get from every step in these shoes. They're not the most energetic. You don't get that kind of big bouncy spring that some daily trainers now offer, some of the super trainers we've been seeing. But there is a consistency to the ride and comfort that just lets you go about your business and get on with it in just relative comfort. And I really like that about a shoe. So simple, no fuss, no frills, just get on with it. Now, to really tease out the differences in the ride between the two of these shoes and to feel as I also did a side-by-side mile, and here's what I found. So I've just done my side-by-side mile. I've got the Saucony Ride 17 on the right foot. I've got the Nike Pegasus 41 on the left foot. Now, these are both shoes that you're going to be able to use for long, easy, slow miles. They're also, in my book, quite versatile shoes. They can go up through the paces. They're not going to be top pace shoes. They are better at the lower end, although they can handle paces, I would say, sort of up to a bit of marathon pace, but you're going to work harder in a marathon pace in both of these shoes. Now, on foot from that mile, the major difference that I'm feeling here, the Saucony Ride 17 comes across a little bit softer. There's a little bit more squish into the midsole across the whole foot, particularly the forefoot. I think you're getting more there, more protection, but it is a bit softer. It's a little bit longer to respond back than the Peg 41, which is just a little bit more immediate, a little bit more direct. There's a bit more ground feel in the Peg 41, particularly at the forefoot. I've put a lot of miles into the Peg 41 now, and that does connect with the road a lot quicker. You can feel a lot more of the road coming up. It's not as soft, not as protected as a result. The other major difference here, I think, comes in the heel package that you've got from the Ride 17 and the Peg 41. I think the Ride 17 feels wider in the heel, and you're getting a bit more cushioning and protection as a result of that. I think you feel the width of the Saucony Ride 17's midsole in that kind of forefoot, particularly at its widest point, sort of mid to forefoot, and also in the heel. I've noticed a lot more foam and a lot more width when I'm landing in my heels. It makes, I think, the Peg 41, although it's not quite as protective, it's not quite as soft, and if you're a big heel striker, you might not get as much protection as you will the Ride 17, but I think it makes the Peg 41 just a little bit more agile and a little bit more nimble. It's a bit more immediate. I think the foam in the Ride 17 is a bit more resilient, as much as it's got a bit more energy, a bit more spring to it. So it does sink a bit more, but when it comes back, there's a bit more spring overall. And I think, so if you like something that's going to give you a bit more cushioning and a bit more spring, I think the Ride 17 is going to do it, but it doesn't feel quite as mobile as the Peg 41. So I like both these shoes actually. I can run nice and happily doing long, easy miles in both of these shoes. I think in terms of comfort and fit on the foot, there's not a huge amount to choose. I think they both have really nice kind of flexible uppers. There's good wiggle room in the toe box. They're both good shoes for going long and spending lots of hours, time on feet as a result of that. Plenty of room. This is a shoe that I could easily, I did a 6-hour marathon test in the Peg 41. I'm going to do a marathon test in the Ride 17, but I think they're both on a par when it comes to that overall comfort on foot for long hauling as well. Now, one last word on durability. After close to 200 miles, the outsole of the Pegs is showing quite a lot of wear on the outside of the heel, and the Ride 17 has endured much better, though the Ride 17 heel collars have breached with a little hole on the inside of the back here, so a bit of swings and roundabouts there.
So I've run about 50 or 60k in both of these shoes and enjoyed them as kind of cushion daily trainers that have a little bit of versatility, but they probably skew more towards the cushion end of things these days. For me, I would probably use them more as kind of easy day shoes, maybe long run shoes, but I do think they are pretty versatile shoes and they kind of fit the trend where you have daily trainers becoming more and more cushion these days. So perhaps past versions of the Pegasus and the Ride would be a bit lighter and kind of sprightlier and more versatile, but these are very much geared up for comfort and they do that job very well. I think they both work pretty well for a range of runners, either as a easy day shoe in in a rotation, or as one shoe to do it all if you do like just use one shoe and want a fairly cushioned daily trainer. So it comes to the differences between the two shoes. I think you have got a slightly higher drop in the Nike, and normally between 8 and 10 millimeters isn't something that I'd really notice that much on the run, but with these shoes I definitely feel like you have got that higher drop with the Nike. You can feel it kind of slapping through a little bit more from heel to forefoot, and the forefoot feels a bit thinner on it than the Ride 17. Even though they are the same height on paper, you've got the lower drop on the Ride. I think it's got a slightly more rocker design. It feels like a smoother transition from heel to toe for me. And when it comes to the foams, I think the Nike has a slightly softer feeling foam with this React X midsole. Saucony's Power Run Plus is a foam that softens over time for sure, but it does have a slightly firmer ride than many of the foams on the market. It's not at all harsh or anything like that. I think it's a very comfortable foam all round, but I think the Nike's probably has a little bit more softness. You get a little bit more responsiveness and energy return out of the Ride 17. And even though it is the heavier of the two shoes, I do think it's probably the one that I'd mark as slightly more versatile. They're both similarly versatile though. I have done some speedier runs in these, but they weren't going to be my top pick for speedy runs, but they can get the job done. And like I say, if you are a one shoe runner, they are both capable enough at the speedy end of things, even if what they do best I think is cruise through daily miles, nice relaxed paces, easy steady paces, and they're both good for long runs as well. Did a short run wearing both shoes at the same time, and it definitely did feel like the Nike had that higher drop, and like I say, the thinner forefoot snapping through from heel to toe as I do. I definitely felt that a bit more in the Nike, where it got a slightly kind of smoother ride out of the Ride 17. Like, it's not a low drop shoe and it's not really excessively rockered either, but it does seem to roll quite smoothly from heel to toe, and that I think creates like quite a nice feeling when you're running at any pace. I like ticking over at easy paces in a shoe like that, and then I think when you are trying to move a bit faster, it gives you a slightly more fluid feeling than the Pegasus. Get a bit more snap and kind of hit the forefoot a bit harder in the Nike, but it's not a huge amount of rebound. Like, I think it is comfortable. I think it absorbs kind of the impact of running very well, and there's no discomfort under the forefoot with this shoe, even on longer or harder runs. But I think you get a bit more kind of energy return and pop out of the Ride 17 when you're running faster, which, like I say, negates the fact this is a slightly heavier shoe. I do think it's got a little bit more versatility to it. But overall, I would say from my run test, the similarities probably outweigh the differences all round. But yeah, I think the Ride 17 has that little bit more versatility, that slightly firmer feeling ride. Pegasus feels a bit more cruisy and easy run focused. Comes to the verdict, I think this is a fairly tricky one to decide. They're both pretty good shoes. I pretty like them a similar amount, and I'd use them for the same kind of job. They're similar in price as well. Like, I'd be tempted to say when I looked at both of them, whichever one came up cheaper, especially if there's a fairly wide disparity in price, I would go for that one. But just going straight preferences, I'd probably just about pick the Ride 17. But I will say the Pegasus is pretty close, and I do prefer the look of the Pegasus, and that is important because if you're going to use it as a shoe, you're going to walk around casually as well. Pegasus, I think, has that extra string to its bow more than the Ride 17. I think it is a shoe you can use for lots of different types of run and to wear around casually. Ride 17, I think, is probably a tad more versatile, maybe has a little bit more speed when it comes to your training runs. Don't like the look of it as much though, so yeah, maybe the Pegasus gets a little bit of an extra benefit on that. Great holiday shoe because of the way it looks, but yeah, I do think they're both pretty good shoes, similar level. Maybe I'd just give it the Ride 17, but overall I'd say if you do find one considerably cheaper than the other one, I'd probably get that shoe.
Verdict then, and this is a tough one to call. For me, these are both very capable shoes that I really like. They'll suit a lot of the mid to back of the pack runners. They're ideal for logging easy miles at slower paces, but they're not totally devoid of kind of up pace potential, so you can work harder in them if you really want to. There is some versatility there. If you're choosing based on ride, I just about prefer the more compact and agile feel of the Pegs, but I can see many runners enjoying the more cushioned and slightly springier ride of the Ride 17. On durability, I think overall the Ride 17 is going to hold on to that midsole ride a little bit longer than the Peg 41s, which I feel has deadened a little bit in the miles that I've run. When it comes to value for money, I'd say the Ride 17 edges it. It can handle 95% of the miles and runs on par with the performance of the Nike Pegasus 41, but looks to be a smidge more durable. So if I had to choose one shoe on balance of all of those things, I think I'd probably recommend the Saucony Ride 17, though it's really margins, and I think the Nike Pegasus 41 is also a very capable daily shoe if you like things somewhat more old school, a bit more traditional than the bouncier big super trainers that we're now seeing many of. So there you have it. That was our head-to-head between the Nike Pegasus 41 and the Saucony Ride 17. I hope you found it useful. Don't forget to hit like and maybe share the video if you did. If you're not already, we'd love it if you'd hit subscribe as well. And if you're after more detailed reviews of both of these shoes, I'm going to whack up videos of those on the channel just about now. Otherwise, as ever, thank you very much for stopping by and listening to us rattle on about shoes, and we'll hope to see you again soon on the Run Testers. In the meantime, happy running, people.